have our role to play. You play yours. We'll see about mine.
As of yesterday, Bleak Faith Forsaken is here on Steam and available for you to play on PC. That being said, I've spent some time with the game, and I wanted to let you know a little bit about my experience and who I think should and should not purchase this game. This is not to try and tell you what to do. However, I think there are some things that everyone should be aware of before they go into purchasing it. Now, at the end of the day, I've enjoyed my time with the game, and I have an overall positive view. But there are some things about the development, about the budget, and about the constraints that have been on this team prior to launch that I think that people should know about before they decide whether or not to purchase, play, or potentially look for that refund on Steam. I think there's a particular type of customer that really should pick up Bleak Faith Forsaken, and I think there's a whole bunch who really should stay pretty far away. So consider this a public service announcement from your friend Pyrus at Pyrus Gaming, and let's dive right in. So Bleak Faith Forsaken is now released and is available on Steam, but before you go out there and you check a whole bunch of reviews that start slamming the game and really kind of leaving you thinking maybe I shouldn't buy this thing, maybe you shouldn't, but let's talk a little bit about it, because I think there are some people that absolutely should, but I don't think everyone should. So let me explain. One of the things you may have noticed from the trailers of Bleak Faith Forsaken is that it's developed by only 3 people. They literally put it up as text in their launch videos and in their trailers. So it is a very small group. 3 people is unheard of for a game that's this large. Secondly, let's talk budgets. So originally this game came up on Kickstarter and it raised a whopping $31,199 on Kickstarter. For anyone who knows anything about creating big open world games, that is literally nothing. That's literally a drop in the bucket. If you go back to 2009 and the original Demon's Souls, that cost millions of dollars to make with a team of people. Yes, Miyazaki came in, put his spin on everything, but it's not like he was in there making the whole thing by himself. FromSoft was already an established company thanks to Kingsfield, and it had teams of people to put it together. Yes, over time technology has made it easier to make games with lower amounts of resources and fewer people, but games that are released now, big budget games that are released, cost millions or tens of millions of dollars to make. This game costs nowhere near that. I'm sure they put a lot of their own money into it. I'm sure it's not just the money from Kickstarter, because literally in the amount of time that it's taken them to develop the game, there's no way that that amount of money would sustain 3 people. But these are important things to keep in mind when playing the game. So the main thing that I want to get across in this video is that Bleak Faith Forsaken, as it is in its current form, is not for everyone. In fact, it's probably not for most people. I haven't played a ton of it, but I've put several hours into it. And what I would say about my time spent with it is that I can see it. I can see the potential of what's here. First of all, the open world is actually pretty large, and it seems to kind of like fold back in on itself, which is probably where the comparisons come for Dark Souls 1. And there's a lot of creativity here when it comes to the aesthetic of the game, the equipment you wear and use, the enemies. I haven't come across too many bosses, but the ones that I have been pretty impressive, and I've definitely enjoyed the combat to a certain extent. The other thing is that the effects, the look, the design, the styling, all of these things show a great deal of promise for the game and for the developer group. But there is a lot of jank and bugginess and visual issues. I mean, there's a lot going on here. And I've been on record for prior games talking about glitchiness, bugginess. I know I went hard on Forspoken when that came out, and how I was really worried about it from the demo, and then lo and behold, the thing was a dumpster fire, and now that whole team has been folded in with Square Enix. But that was a Square Enix-backed team who had years of development time, millions of dollars to make the game. This is a completely different situation. 3 people with an extremely limited budget and no big arcane Square Enix there to take care of the bills in the meantime. So they're going to get the benefit of the doubt from someone like me more so than when I see glitchiness in Hogwarts Legacy, or I see Forspoken as, well, as Forspoken. You may think that that's some kind of a double standard, but it's honestly not. If Forspoken was made by a team of 3 people, I honestly would have been shocked by it. I would have said, wow, this is incredible. I can't wait to see what this team is going to do. But that's not the case. So what are the issues with the game, and why do I think that there are a lot of people that really should stay away? Well, first off, it's compared to Dark Souls 1, but honestly, this game is not even as solid as Demon's Souls. It's not even that close, to be perfectly honest with you. There are certain elements of the game which are in pretty good shape. For example, like I said, the level design is really cool, the aesthetic's really cool. There are elements to the combat which feel kind of ready, but the hitboxes are kind of off, especially in certain enemies. It's very difficult to understand certain things that are going on. There's a real weirdness with how the mapping of the controller functions works. I mean, when I first went into the game, the things that I needed to do was I needed to take the sensitivity down to the lowest possible setting for every direction. I needed to take the gamma and boost it up basically to max. Now, I will say I didn't have any crashing. I did have some stuttering in a couple of areas. I'm not really sure what that's about, but the majority of the game ran pretty flawlessly. Now, my computer is of a pretty high quality. I mean, it's an RTX 3080 12 gigabyte with an i7 12700K and 64 gigabytes of RAM, so it's a pretty beefy computer. But I ran it on like max settings, ultra everything, and I had some strange stuttering at certain points. I've watched a few other people stream it, and they've had similar issues in some areas, some worse than me. But the majority of the game actually runs pretty well. Like I said, no crashing, no like game-breaking things. It's more like immersion-breaking things. So I'll give you an example. There's this one area where there's a giant that's on a bridge, and you can fight him, or you can try to run past him. But the first thing is that he clips with everything. So he ends up like one leg off the bridge most of the time. He died off the side of the bridge a couple times for me because I died to an enemy after that giant, and then I have to come back through him. And the times that I ran past the giant, I found that he can actually walk through the building that's behind him. So he'll literally follow me. So like there's this terrifying moment where I was trying to run past the giant and fight this giant dude with an axe, but now I've got the axe guy who's been two-shotting me along with the giant, so, you know, I mean, the building like doesn't exist for this giant. So there's wonkiness like that. There's this jankiness to it. The other thing that happens is that this game, I mean, Souls games don't hold you by the hand. This game does absolutely no hand holding. So it doesn't do the greatest job. It has pop-ups, which actually look pretty good as far as the UI is concerned, and they'll show you briefly what's going on. But that combined with the strangeness to the button mapping for controllers, I used a DualShock from a PlayStation 4, and it was literally not letting me map certain things. Then when I tried with keyboard and mouse, it's probably better, but I couldn't bring myself to do that with a Souls game. So I went back to the controller, I started working with it, I changed some things around, and I've gotten it to a point where I can play the game with a controller. Again, I had to turn sensitivity down to like nothing, and I had to move where almost all the buttons were. Almost all of the buttons, not all of them. There's a jump mechanic, which is kind of floaty, which takes some getting used to. When you first load in, the reason you have to turn down the sensitivity is that it is so sensitive that it's very easy to quickly turn the camera and end up running off the side of a building or something like that. Then there's some quality of life things that they can fix over time. Like the game has these huge ladders, I think because they're trying to preserve the overall scale. So like these areas are pretty large, and they don't give a crap that there's a person trying to run through them. Like they are what they are. Take that for what you will. Like it's not designed for a player, it's designed for the look of the architecture and that sort of thing. So it can take you a long time to get across these things, but they're really tall. Like the scale is huge. So these ladders go to like the moon. They take forever to climb and to slide down. And there isn't a slide down mechanic like they added in Dark Souls. So it takes a long time to go up and down these ladders. On these runbacks, if you die, the ladders are like the worst part of it. The leveling is sort of gear based. So basically, if you pick up a bunch of good gear, then you get a lot stronger really fast. I know I tried to fight the first boss with a tire iron. That was a bad idea. He kept wrecking me. So I would chip him down and chip him down and chip him down and he'd get to like half health, but I would run out of my 2 quick potions, and then eventually, a wonky hitbox here or there would get me and I'd die. But I went, I got some items, I got some armor, and made a huge difference. I came back and absolutely thumped him. I don't know, I guess that's sort of like a traditional Souls thing, but it's not leveling in the truest sense of the word. It's finding good equipment, putting that on, and then you're much stronger. Who shouldn't buy this game? Anyone who thinks that it's a finished product, that it's ready to be delivered, that they're ready for a full-blown review and to dive in and to treat it as any other game, you're asking for a refund. I mean, you're going to buy the game, you're going to play it for an hour, and you're going to run back to Steam and refund it. Or you're going to get stuck with it, miss the refund window, and you're going to be really upset about it, and you're probably going to flame it. And I don't want that to happen, because like I said, I think the game has a lot of potential, a lot of promise. I think that maybe it's better to think of this as like a Kickstarter plus. I mean, the game is further along than it would be in like an alpha or a Kickstarter. Like, it is a playable game. You can complete the game. There are people who have, I haven't because I didn't get a review code, but there are people who have completed the game, who've beaten it. That being said, this game is nowhere near the normal level of expectation for that kind of stuff. Not in that the quality of its elements and that sort of thing. I mean, certain elements look way better than others, but you're just going to find a bunch of things that you really wouldn't think should be in a completed game, like a finished product game. Long story short, I think this has a lot of promise. I think this is a game that eventually could be a big time game or a big time IP. I think this is a great start for this developer group, and I think that it's still a long ways away from the general public recognizing it for how good it is. Sure, you can call me an apologist if you want. Yes, you could say that, I'm not being fair because I beat up all these other games. But personally, if you had a comparable budget with a comparable crew of people developing this game for a comparable amount of time, this game wouldn't look like this. But the fact that it's gotten this far with the budget it's had and the people it's had, the manpower it's had, to me, is really, really promising. So this isn't going to be the type of game where it's put out and they just do some bug fixes here and there. They're probably going to make some pretty large changes, some quality of life changes, some upgrades, some bug fixes. My guess, based off of what I've been able to find about the developers and their process, I know they have an active Discord, that they're listening to feedback, that they're looking to make improvements to the game, and they really want this to be a top quality product. So this is not the finished product. My guess is that a year from now, 2 years from now, this game looks and plays and feels very different than it does currently. So quickly before I wrap things up, a few things that I would like to see from the developers to make this more accessible to the general public and make it probably a more successful launch, better received. The controllers is a big thing. This thing needs to be pretty much straight out of the box. Select your preset. What are you using? You're using an Xbox controller, you're using a PlayStation controller, you're using whatever. Here you go. Boom. Put this preset in. Works flawlessly. That needs to be fixed.
As a quick update, the developers have already tweeted out that their first order of business is to work on the controllers, which I think is absolutely the right thing to tackle first.
Secondly, the defaults need to change. So the gamma needs to be at a point where you can see the game. If someone's going to stream it, that it shows up okay. I had to jack the gamma to the max in order for it to show up in my recording, which is playing over my back there. If I didn't, it would have been super, super dark. Then to work on the combat and the hitboxes, there are times when very, very strange interactions happen. You die for reasons that you have no idea. There is a mechanic where you can knock down a large enemy, like a giant, get on his back and start stabbing him, And it's very difficult to tell when the giant is reaching to his back to try and grab you, because you're supposed to stab and get damage in while you can, but then before he reaches and hits you, I mean, he basically one-shots you when he finally gets you. So it's not very clear when to jump off the back. Just general clarity when it comes to combat and some of these extras that have been put in would, I think, go a long way towards helping the overall playability of the game. I think the latter thing, with making it faster to climb or especially descend, would be a nice little bonus. I think that working on the clipping of the boxes, especially when large enemies literally just walk through walls and ceilings, I mean, that's kind of tough. And again, I think all of this stuff can get patched and fixed. But the aesthetic of the game, the feel of the game, the music of the game, I will say it is a little buggy with the music because it'll sort of change sometimes or it'll drop out. And I don't think that that's intended, but to me, I think it's a pretty cool approach. They're sort of minimalistic. They're using, guitar and electric guitar. They're going for either sort of more of like an unplugged version, and then you get into the heat of battle and it picks up and it's almost like a heavy rock or metal version. I mean, it's really cool. It's fun too, as long as the frustration isn't there. And I get it, it's a Souls-like. There's gonna be a lot of frustration in Souls-likes, especially for, casual players. I don't consider myself casual, but believe me, the frustration is real. And the more that the developers can make the frustration more focused on actually, the difficulty of the enemy as opposed to things that they can't really see or understand, I think that will go a long way. If you want to invest in a project for $29.99, there's a discount deal. I don't know if it's over yet, but for launch, it was an extra 10% off. So if you purchased it pretty much right at launch, it was like 26 bucks. This is not a full price $70 game. This is a $29.99 game put out by 3 developers on Steam. Yes, it hasn't come to the consoles yet. I heard somebody say it was coming to PlayStation, but I don't know that that's to be true. And honestly, the way that the game is playing right now, I would say it's probably not coming to consoles in the very near future. That would obviously be a big boon in terms of budget, but they really needed to get it to the point. I think console players as a whole expect a very, very complete and concise and consistent product, and that is not what Bleak Faith Forsaken is at the moment. Again, I think a year from now, 2 years from now, this game, even 6 months from now, I think this game will look and feel very different and be more accessible to people. But for those people that are going out there, and I've already seen a few of them that are reviewing it terribly and beating it down, you need to take a step back and understand the actual process and what's gone into this thing. This is a few people with a minuscule budget who have made a very ambitious game that does work, it does function, it does have excellent elements to it, but it is only a few people. They've only been able to do a certain amount of quality control, and they're only asking for $29.99 for the game. This is not going to end in the next month. They're not going to say, oh, let's patch a few bugs and that's it, the game's done, let's move on to the next one. Their goal is to make this a top-notch game before they move on to the next project. And for that, I applaud them. For that, I am willing to put my money in and back this group. For that, I will not bash them. I will point out issues with the game. I will say that certain people probably shouldn't buy the game. And that's not to try and hurt their sales or anything. It's just because I don't want a whole bunch of people buying the game, throwing negative reviews out there and asking for refunds, because I see the promise in it and I think that there's a good game to be had here. And given enough time and enough resources, this developer group is going to make it happen. At least that's my feeling, that's my bet. PSA over. Thank you guys for checking in. Again, I just wanted to get this out before all of the hate starts on this game, because unfortunately it's going to happen. I think a lot of the big channels have sort of held off. They've just put some gameplay footage in here or there, but it's going to happen eventually. Someone's going to try and crucify this thing who has a big mouthpiece, and it really shouldn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen. But before you guys hear from somewhere else, let me put it out to you. This game is only for certain people at the current moment. If you want to back something with a lot of promise that will be something in the future, without putting a big investment in, and you're okay with dealing with it in its current state, then you should purchase the game. If you are not, and you're expecting a complete finished product along the lines of even the original Demon's Souls or Dark Souls, no, it's not there. Don't buy it. Please. Don't go running to Steam and review bomb this thing. Don't go out there and putting a bunch of refunds in. It's not going to help anybody. So I look forward to seeing what this game turns into. I do not want to do a full review of the game until I feel like it's in a better state than it currently is. And once it is, you will see it here on the channel. So that's going to do it for today. I'd really appreciate it if you found this video to be helpful to subscribe. I'm trying to work towards building up my subscriber base so that I could try to get these games before they release. If you liked the video, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up. And if you'd like to check out more from my channel, here's my most recent review posted right here. Other than that, thank you for watching. And this is Pirates for Pirates Gaming saying, until next time, I will see you there.